Some people have never met anybody with Tourette's, and it doesn't matter the age. The second you do, you click because you go, I don't have to explain myself or why I'm going like this. So
Yeah.
it's just to try to always be yourself. I feel like I've always been myself. Not easy to do, Tourette's or not, because the world, there's a lot of followers. It's so easy to go, I'm just going to do what they do and follow instead of thinking for yourself, trying to be unique and individual. But you have to be. And it's not easy. The majority of people with Tourette's, it will subside with us as we get older. There is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Welcome to The Uptick, brought to you by the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, empowering children and adults through education, advocacy, and research by sharing the stories and experiences relevant to the TS community.
Welcome back to The Uptick. Today I'm speaking with Daniel Ferron. Daniel is an entertainer, actor, and filmmaker. He grew up in New Jersey and was diagnosed with TS in the mid-1970s. He's got an incredible story going through life with this condition at a time when there was so much less awareness of it. Daniel, I want to start at the beginning of your story. Can you walk us through those earliest years when your tics first began?
Sure, Michael. How are you tonight, buddy?
Doing really great. How about yourself?
All right, good. Thank you. Yeah, I was born in New Jersey in 1970 and diagnosed with Tourette's between 75 and 76 by Dr. Arthur Shapiro. Very few people knew anything about this. The name alone, the literally longevity of the name sounds intimidating and contagious if you don't know what it is. It's such a different ballgame than presently because so many people know what it is. Yeah, I had the usual throat clearing, the eye blinking, the arms, verbal tics, physical tics. Can't even imagine. Like my mom and dad were like, what's wrong? Obviously, I didn't know. My grandmother at the time was reading a magazine and there was an article happened to be about Dr. Shapiro and his wife, Elaine, about Tourette's and describing some of the tics that we all are familiar with. And my grandmother said, look at this article. Of course, we didn't have all the emails and everything was just a phone number. And there was an actual phone number for Dr. Shapiro's office. And my mother called it. It was like Family Circle or Women's Day magazine. And Mrs. Shapiro answered. Imagine that today. You could, everything's, we'll, leave a message or we'll call you back. My mother, from a woman to a woman, from a mother to a mother, is saying, I don't know what's wrong with my son. Just briefly reading the article about you and your husband. And she said, we are actually leaving for vacation today. My mother was hysterical. They postponed their vacation. And they brought me in the next day to his office.
Wow.
It was that. What an angel. He was out of Mount Sinai in New York, and he had a separate office, I think in Nyack, New York. So we went to the office there. And I remember it was about 5 or 6 sitting in an office, and he went in the other room with my parents. And unbeknownst to me, watching me through a one-way mirror, and he said, your son has Tourette syndrome. It has a name. And it was like, oh my God, okay, now what do we do? This man was a godsend. I mean, my mother was just, he was his bedside manner. He was the angel with the answers. Even though he still didn't know much about it, he had already written a book about that thick, and nobody else knew what it was. I think my mother said, I remember before she called, she said, she almost didn't bother. She said, this guy's got to be so busy with people calling him. Well, again, look what happened. I mean, they postponed their vacation and got me diagnosed. We started with EKGs and EEGs and blood tests and all kinds of poking and prodding. I was like his new guinea pig, but that's okay because we were going to get somewhere, hopefully.
So he was trying to study it and learn more about it through you too, with all these tests they were doing. Okay.
Absolutely. I have a documentary about my life with Tourette's, and one of the gentlemen that we met while filming it, he's a little older than I am, and he had Dr. Shapiro, and he was a guinea pig as well.
For any of our listeners who may not know, Dr. Arthur Shapiro was a big pioneer in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and in early Tourette's research and treatment based in New York. And really, he should be given so much credit for moving the needle, getting more support, really taking Tourette and the way we treat it from a psychoanalytic model more to something more holistic, looking at the person, not blaming the patient or their parents. Everyone I've talked to who's met with him talks about how kind and hospitable he was. And his wife, too. They say she would welcome you into their home. They would make you dinner. They were just kind people. So your example about them canceling vacation to talk to you, I that is perfectly in line with everything I've heard about that family.
I feel so honored, not only that I was diagnosed by him. I mean, I was young, but all that made when I didn't really know what was going on because I was a kid, that it made my parents' life easier on top of being stressed with this is, again, like an angel going, it's going to be okay. There's light at the end of the tunnel, which was not before that was like.
You didn't have a name for it. You don't know what's going on.
Yes,
yeah, especially at that time in the 70s.
Oh, man. I was on trial meds for 6 years, from 6 to 12. I always say somebody had to do it. Michael, it did everything. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. Again, I'm really honored at 53 that I was that chosen person, because it really made me the person I am today. And by the time I was about 12 and I'm developing and changing into puberty and all that, and she said, take them off everything. What's the worst that's going to happen? And within 6 months, it wasn't cured, but all my tics subsided to a point where I went into 10 years of remission.
Wow.
Till about 19 or 20, doing less than I do now with nothing, no meds. And that was my miracle. I remember when I was probably shortly before getting off the meds, just tying my shoe one day, my arms, I'm all over the place. I'm trying. And I was exhausted. And I go, oh my God, I was by myself in my room. I go, am I ever going to be normal? Am I ever going to be able to drive a car and hold a job and have a conversation without being all over the place? And within a couple of years later, I was not even. And it was like, there's not a day that doesn't go by without going, God, it could have been so much worse. This is why I call my documentary, My Life, My Story, My Tourette's, because everybody's is individual. It affects us all differently. That was that. I still continue to see him but eventually stopped because I wasn't cured, but his job was done with me. We kept in touch and I moved on. I was fortunate to go to a school because I was diagnosed again. Back then we didn't have all these titles. Everything's a title. And I had Tourette Syndrome and a mild learning disability. That was it. Imagine today it's like, oh no, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, the whole, whatever. I think we all have, to some effect, OCD, ADHD, maybe not just diagnosable, but I mean, I think we all, it's a human trait. So I'm 53 and I love when I tell people this story in person and they go, are you on meds now? I go, I haven't been on meds since I was 12.
Wow.
They said, my insanity is pure natural. My sense of humor. Of course, that's my medication.
Hey, sometimes those go hand in hand. It's interesting too with this almost 10-year near complete remission you had. At what point did the tics start up again? And do you have any idea what it was that brought the tics back?
Good question. So when you have Tourette's, even if it's subsided, we're always in motion. We're always moving. It's just a low frequency version of what I used to do, but it's nothing compared into how horrific it was controlling my life. And it hasn't done that in years. I thank the dear Lord above. I've always been religious. We all go through that. We all go through something unpleasant. And I'm glad I went through it as a young person, so he could build me for the rest of my life and live somewhat normal.
Yeah.
By the grace of God. So I grew up in Clifton, New Jersey, which is northern Jersey. It's become a huge melting pot. I got my older sister still lives there, so I go back for the holidays. I graduated high school in 1989 with the diploma from Clifton High School, but I was fortunate, and all because of my mom. And again, remember, we didn't have the computers and the emails and what we take for granted today. I don't even know how she did it. She went to the Board of Education and said, my son needs special education of some sort to not be ridiculed and not be made fun of, and just go and get my education and get out of Dodge like a lot of people just want to do, and see what happens, because every day was a challenge. I think stress is the number one. Yeah, there's that word. See, I said the word. You went.
I started ticking right as you said stress. Yeah, it's like trigger word.
Yeah, a lot of people. I graduated high school, learned how to drive, got a car, started working, and was so lucky to work. Who knew if a couple of years before if anybody would ever hire me? I was fortunate to go to a school more for like kids with learning disabilities or dysfunctional families. Classrooms were smaller and everybody had an issue. So nobody makes fun of everybody. It was wonderful. And I was there. I remained there from probably about 5th grade all the way to high school. But I got the Clifton diploma, but I got to be myself amongst the other students that also, some kids came out of the high school for a year or two to catch up with schoolwork and went back to the school. It was different with everybody. But she fought like hell with the Board of Education in person, meeting after meeting, getting me in some kind of this school that was the only one of its kind, also in New Jersey. Got me bused there. It didn't cost anything. I mean, a lot of legwork, but you know what, man, it was worth it for my mother's peace of mind and mine.
I remember you saying this last time we talked. You really attributed a lot of your growth and just your journey, the way you were able to handle your tics. So much of this you attributed to your mom and the support that she gave you, and the love, warmth, that unconditional support. I'd love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. Again, so I have 2 older sisters. I'm the youngest of 3. There's 3 years in between us, and I'm 53. My father worked a lot, and he's been gone many years, but he left us off well because he died young. So my mother raised 2 girls and myself, me with the Tourette's. And again, it's a different time because all this is so easy now. Oh, Tourette's. Okay. It makes me smile anytime I converse with somebody I've just met. And very rare, like it's literally 99.9% of people at least have heard of it or say, oh, I know what that is. I've heard of that. Or I've seen that on Oprah, or I've seen that on MTV, or I have a cousin that has it. It's just a common word. And it's like, God have mercy, blows my mind, because you don't have to stress that and go, oh, I have to explain myself to this person. You don't. And people have their own problems today. They're not worrying about what you and I are doing with our tics. It takes the weight off of us. And I got to tell you, I know you're all younger than I, at 53, not every day, but whenever like stuff like this, to be able to educate other people is still continuously healing. Every time I do something, I feel like I educated another person, brought it out into the light from the darkness. I feel a little better. Like, it's just, as I get older, it's not weird, but it's cool.
It's therapeutic. No, I get the same result. I mean, it makes my tics worse when I talk about it or when I'm helping someone with it, but it's the right, but overall, like that's the life I want to live. Like I feel I'm doing my part, my contribution.
And it's easier today because people know what it is. But for years I didn't cry or anything. I just couldn't talk about it without ticking. So I thought, sorry, I can't discuss it, because it was hard to describe to people if they don't get it. And it's okay. So yeah. I worked in Jersey for many years. I did retail. I think you have to have a sense of humor, Tourette's or not, to work in retail.
Yeah, probably a lot of fields for your paths.
Especially in New Jersey.
Stressful.
So you got to have the backbone. There's no job that I regret. I have many jobs. So I worked for Bed Bath & Beyond for many years, like 10 plus years ago. And I enjoyed it when it was at the time. It was stressful, but you got to work somewhere. And people, again, too many people have their own issues to be worrying about what's going on with me. The people I worked with, and I would always tell people I worked with, I'd say, if you're looking for me to help a customer, I said, all you got to do is listen. You'll hear me.
True. Yeah. Does it take too long before you'll see a tic or hear a tic? Or
I said, and I used to laugh. I used to say, I never want to hear any of you used to say, where's Danny? Because listen, I'm either in the bathroom, but give it a couple seconds. And they used to laugh. And they said, you're absolutely right. I'd say, just walk in and go, oh, he's in aisle 5 or whatever.
They can always track your whereabouts in the store. I mean, being able to have humor and laugh about it is so important. I mean, that's how we cope. One of the ways we cope with this, with something, anything that can be a challenge. You got to be able to see light and humor in it.
Yeah. So I'm not saying I haven't been hurt before emotionally, but not compared to some people. I was very lucky. I was sheltered. And you know what? That was okay because I was fine at home. I wasn't sheltered in like, oh my God, we can't take this guy out. Though when my dad was alive, family functions that we did, we went into New York City in 82 or 80 to see Annie on Broadway, the show for Annie.
I'm jealous.
And
I've wanted to see that one.
it was wonderful. Later in life, I got into acting in the entertainment business, and I didn't appreciate it then because my father had to wait outside with me, whatever theater it was at, and my mother and my sister stayed. So my sister always says, she goes, at the time, there was 5 of us, my mother, my father, my sisters, and I, 5 advocates in our house. Think about that. I never thought of it like that. She put it like that. She goes, we had 5 advocates in the house. They were 3 years older. We're all from each other, and probably mortified, embarrassed, traumatized when friends would say to their, what's wrong with your brother? Because they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, it's hard to, that's why you get frustrated because it's hard to explain until like now it's different because you can go on and go, it is what it is. And everybody that will be like, there's people that have twitches and little tic disorders because it's a crazy world and stress brings it out, whatever. They don't necessarily have Tourette's, but so it's come so far.
Well, largely because of the early contributions of people like you and that advocacy back then. I mean, that's why we were able to live in a world now where I can disclose that I have Tourette and people respond saying, oh, I know about that. What are your tics? Like they know that we're a tic. They know what that is. Like we've come so far. I can only imagine the 70s, 80s, how different things were then.
So back in the day, originally I wanted to be a guitarist in a rock band.
Yeah.
My mother actually had taken lessons. Somebody had given her an electric guitar. My mom rocked for a couple of years. So she had this guitar. We had actual records back then. And I would dress up in front of a mirror and I would kiss Bon Jovi, whatever. I lived through the 80s. So it was like great music.
That's the time. Yeah.
Sunglasses and wigs and hats and props. And it was just like, oh, this is cool. And it distracted my Tourette's. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This is better than medication. And I did that for years. Looking back, I just did it. And I started getting into films and movies and art and music. Again, all before computers, all before the internet. I used to go to the movies a lot. Now, this is interesting because I would go to a matinee a lot because there was almost nobody in the theater.
Uh-huh.
But I guess I was so focused, I would tick, but it wasn't so distracting that they said, you can't be in here. Because they tried it with me when I was older, and I said, yes, I can. I said, you want to see my
card carrying Tourette here.
Like, no, I
pick it up with my doctor.
I saw a movie called The Untouchables. Have you ever seen that?
I have not seen that one.
Oh, you got to see it. The Untouchables, Kevin Costner, De Niro played Al Capone. It's based on the true events of how they legitimately put him in jail for tax evasion with all the murdering he did. As I said, I want to act and I want to get into character. I want to, from the inside out, costumes and makeup, wigs and hair and mustaches, whatever. I later became self-taught special effects makeup artist as well. So I wear many hats. But I remember going to see The Untouchables for $5 because that's all it was. And I used to go to the movies a lot because for $5, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I'm not thinking about the Tourette's. I'm like, I need to entertain. Okay. I need to make them laugh or cry or whatever. I need it. And it was because it was like oxygen. I needed it. So as I got older, and again, all before this, magazines and library and research, renting VHS tapes and hitting the rewind button back and forth to memorize the script, the lines, writing it down, which was great. I love it. I miss that. This all was morphing into what would be my life. Who knew? I'm glad I was able to do it all without internet, but without the cell phones and the computers. And I used to work in a music store at the mall in Jersey, and I had a good friend of mine who still were friends. And we would go religiously, every Sunday, we'd go to the matinees at the movies and sometimes see 2 or 3 films. We'd get the big bucket of popcorn and the big gallon soda. Now I can't handle, my bladder can't handle that. And we would talk movies. We'd go to a diner and we would talk about the movie. And it was just, again, when I look back, it was all puzzle pieces of my life that were to one day fit. I got my education without the extra BS of being bullied or whatever, just being overwhelmed by the normal kids, the kids that were whatever, and yet got the diploma from there. So it was like, it was all legit through the board education. But my mother fought for me, not realizing at the moment, not until years later. And I was like, my God, Mom, she was my angel.
That's incredible to hear that. And I know you made a documentary, My Life, My Story, My Tourette's. What inspired you to put that together?
I remember thinking, as creative, I want to do something different. I want to do something. And I thought, I can hear my mother going, don't ever feel sorry for yourself. I said, what am I going to sit around and twiddle my thumbs? I mean, my God, I said, I'm a creative person. I have to do and work. And, I got together with this guy and his classmates to do like their thesis. For whatever reason, something happened, but it wasn't meant to be. So I have the idea that instead of saying I'm going to use my Tourette's to take advantage of a situation, I'm going to use it to show other people that you can do anything you want and say, I have Tourette's. If I can work and talk and make movies and be creative, so can others. So as an inspiration, I thought, now I'm going to use it, but in a good way. So it floated around for like 10 years. I mean, because that didn't work out until I finally met a guy who was now a friend of mine. He was a friend of a friend who was a videographer and really had done nothing major, weddings and what have you. And we got together, God, like 9 years ago already. Can't believe it. And it was like I've never had something align, the stars align for 3.5 years of this journey while making this film, while taking care of my mother, while my friend got married, while we worked and did life. And the doors blew open. It was like we would work for a month filming things, and then a month would go by and we were preparing for the next thing. And God would just, this whirlwind, door closing, door open, door closing, door opening, door. We talk now, he goes, never could do it now. It would never work right now. It was time. It was it was crazy. And he did everything tech, directed it, edited it, filmed it, produced it, the whole gamut. You saw it, right? You said you saw it?
Yeah, I did. I looked it over before this. Yeah, I was watching it. Really good. Well put together.
I think it was a labor of love, but I said, I want the world to know about it. You get older and you go, my thing was always for exposure, because when you have Tourette's and you've lost a lot, you have nothing to lose. When you've had something that has taken over your life when we're younger and it's hard, my quote on Facebook is, everything after Tourette's is cake and life. The smaller things that might otherwise traumatize us, I go, oh, that's nothing, whatever. At the time, we did here in PA with a lot of screenings, and it got a lot of exposure and newspaper. And locally here, I reached out to the news stations and got a lot of press for it. It was wonderful. Because you got to make your own. Andy Kaufman, you know who Andy Kaufman was?
Yeah.
Andy Kaufman, and I learned this watching Jim Carrey play him, which was brilliant, in Man on the Moon, is he created his own, and again, before the internet, he wreaked his own havoc. He would go somewhere knowing he was going to get kicked out or do some stupid prank that would be involved, but there's no such thing as bad media or bad exposure.
You're drawing attention to something. Yeah, they can be done strategically. You got
to be your own press. So I love that. And as you can see, I like to talk a lot, but I say to people I know, I go, we don't get far in life by keeping our mouths shut. I said, I have the gift of gab, but it's gotten me very far in my life.
We're touching on some interesting points here. And as we wrap things up, I often like to ask my guests what advice they have for people with TS. And I think I want to dedicate enough time to this because I think you'd have an awful lot to share on this topic. And I'm thinking especially with some of our listeners are young, they're in school, they're going through some of the difficult years of puberty, their tics may be flaring, co-occurring conditions are spiking. And it feels like this is the life they know, is just things are tough and tics are really rough. The challenges with OCD, anxiety. What advice would you give to that person?
I can identify many ways. So I'm 53. I have a niece and nephews, but a lot of people I know are young. I mean, I volunteer religiously every year, which I love, at a Tourette summer camp. I'm in with NJCTS as well as the TAA, and then PATSA, which is the Pennsylvania Tourette Syndrome Alliance. Awesome. Again, they're all great. They're all wonderful and do their part in this community. And so I go every year. I always say I'm like the parent and the kid, because I can talk to the parent about when I was a child, and then the kids can identify. That's what's great about being, especially around younger people with Tourette's, because some people have never met anybody with Tourette's, and it doesn't matter the age. The second you do, you click, because you go, I don't have to explain myself or why I'm going like this. So it's just to try to always be yourself. I feel like I've always been myself. Not easy to do, Tourette's or not, because the world, there's a lot of followers. It's so easy to go, I'm just going to do what they do and follow instead of thinking for yourself, trying to be unique and individual. But you have to be. And it's not easy. The majority of people with Tourette's, it will subside with us as we get older. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. We're both sitting here ticking, but it's not destructive. It's not horrific. We've learned to deal with it. And they can too. Do your thing. Just be yourself. Whether you want to be up here or you want to fly low under the radar. But there's so many more opportunities, a lot that we didn't have, that I didn't have as a kid. So go for the gold. If you're going to go out for something, do it right. Do it the old go big or go home. Say, damn it, I have Tourette's. And, that's it. You're going to, here I am. Love me or don't love me. And then the hell with you if not.
Oh, that's right. You either accept me or you don't.
Then you call me. I tell everybody I meet, I've never turned somebody down. So I meet people who go, oh my God, I was telling my nephew or my cousin whose kid has Tourette's. I said, have them reach out to me. I'll talk to them, the parent, the kid, whatever. I said, my social media is like an open door. I said, if I can help somebody ease their mind or a parent, and I always do. I said, people that know me know that. I said, I always I don't know these people. I said, but you know what? I said, because it starts here at home in the community and because it's unique and different. Let's do a podcast part 2 because there's for another time because we got so much. I could go on for hours.
There's always so much. I know. We could go just continue all night here with it, but it's wonderful stuff. Yeah. Love what you're saying and what we're discussing here. Any other thoughts or anything on your mind you'd love for our listeners to hear?
Here's a challenge for the young people and other people as well. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes a day, shut everything off. It doesn't help with the Tourette's, the computer, we're all connected 24 hours. Again, I remember a time when before having these, my sisters and I always say, you'd make plans on the house phone to meet your friends at the mall or out with bikes. And you were out all day running and playing and whatever, hanging out. And there's so much, health issues with young people. You have to get out and you got to just get off this for a little bit. Have a conversation in person or on the regular, just on the phone. It's just, that's it. It's just, you got to work on, everybody has to, don't worry what everybody else is doing. Focus on you, whoever you are. And just be yourself. To be honest with yourself in your life the best you can. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. We're all going to continue to make them. That's part of life. But embrace them and go, okay, what can I always say, I want to get a shirt that says life. Take what you need and leave the rest. No, you got to shut it off. Not easy.
Accept yourself for who you are and then build that life where you can be that person that you are. Embrace it.
And I think the people who have Tourette's, once you can do that and go, it's not going to go away. It's not, but it will subside. You will see as you get older and you're going to be fine. You're going to graduate high school and decide what you're going to do.
I echo that too. So I'm 30 right now. I can say even age 30 compared to when I was a teenager, I have so much more clarity now about my life and about my Tourette and things they make a little more sense. Who I am as a person. I mean, your prefrontal lobe is developing, all of that, prefrontal cortex. It's true. I started noticing in my mid to late 20s, just my sense of self seemed to sort of stabilize or become more formed. It's hard to explain. And I could not have articulated this to my 16-year-old self when I was
Oh, no.
ticking and things were, it really did come with time. Things just naturally, kind of biologically just started to work their way out the way
Really
that,
good.
and I became that person that I was going to be. So yeah, I a lot of what you're saying, embrace who you are and filter out the rest because you're going to find yourself. And that's what you need to embrace.
Yeah, no, wonderful. And you'll find what you just said gets even better. I liked my 20s and 30s, my 40s and 50s. It's like, it just comes with time. Being back in the race with like now and doing all these things, which again, I was years without doing anything, but I feel so much better other than trying to lose some weight. I feel better and can let go of life and things we can't control now better than I could when I was younger. And I'm not as depressed. And it's like, oh, I can breathe and I can just go, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just
Love
let
that.
things build. Yeah.
Love that. It's a great note here to end things on. I love that.
Yeah. Daniel Ferron. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Reach out to me, message me. Hey, I saw you on the podcast and we can talk. Phone number, text, email. And I'm always open. Where I give people like yourself who I meet permission. Give somebody my phone number. Just say, hey, I mentioned you. Give them my email or whatever. And I'm always got in here to listen because I've been there.
Yeah, give Daniel a call. You can call him Danny or Daniel. He goes by
It doesn't
both.
matter.
And also, the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome is a resource as well. If you're looking for a provider, a doctor, physician, therapist, or mentor, someone to speak to your classmates, your teacher, any kind of referral source there. Don't hesitate to reach out to NJCTS and we can connect you with someone as well. But Daniel, it's been lovely having you on the podcast here. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated this.
Michael, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad that we got a chance to finally do this, buddy.
Me too. It was a good one. To all of our listeners, thank you for listening and tune in again in 2 weeks.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for listening to The Uptick, brought to you by the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, empowering you to stretch the boundaries to live your best life. The NJ Center for Tourette Syndrome and Associated Disorders, NJCTS, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on this podcast. We do not endorse any recommendation or opinion made by any guest, nor do we advocate any treatment.